Bristol Community College, Mathematics with Dan Avedikian, Math 060, Topics in Developmental Mathematics, Section 2.11, Problem 18. This is Section 2.11, Problem 18. It says Kim's car has 12.5 gallons of gas in the tank. If her car gets 25 miles to the gallon, how much gas will be left in the tank after she drives 40 miles? So it's got to be less than 12.5, obviously, right? You know, it's going to be 10 or 11 gallons. So how do we figure it out for an exact answer? Well, first of all, we have to figure out how much gas did she use to drive 40 miles. So the car gets 25 miles to the gallon. So we are going to divide 40 divided by 25. So if you think about it, like if the car got 25 miles to the gallon to go 50 miles would take 2 gallons, right? And how would that 2 gallons come about? The 50 divided by the 25. So it's a little less than 50, but that confirms that we should be dividing in this case. So we can actually write that as a fraction, 40 over 25, that's what that division means. Or we can actually go ahead and do out the division, and this would reduce, you can see 5 goes into the top 8 times, 5 into the denominator 5 times. So, and you'll see if you do the division, you'll get the same answer. 25 divides into 40 how many times? It goes in once, right? Twice would be too big, it'd be 50. So 1 times 25 is 25. 40 minus 25 is 15. So the remainder is the new numerator. The number that was the denominator, or the number outside here, is the new denominator. So 1 and 15 25ths, so 15 over 25 reduces both by 5, would be 3/5. So use 1 3/5 gallons of gas, which is the same as the 8/5 I got here just by turning it into a fraction right away. Right? If I did 5 times 1, I get 5. 5 plus 3 more is 8, 8/5. So either way, we use 1 3/5 gallons of gas. So we started with 12.5 gallons of gas in the car. We used up 1 3/5 gallons to travel 40 miles, so I'll subtract off the 1 3/5 away from the 12.5. So I will do 12 1/2 minus 1 3/5. And that'll tell me how many gallons of gas are left in the gas tank of that car. So to subtract the fractions, I will need a common denominator, and if I'm working with 2 and 5, a good common denominator is 10, because 2 divides into 10 evenly, 5 divides into 10 evenly. Both denominators divide into 10 evenly. So for the upper fraction, the 1/2, 2 times something became a 10, it was times 5, so the numerator gets multiplied times the same value, 1 times 5, and 1 times 5 is 5. For the other fraction, the 3/5, the 5 must have been multiplied times 2, because 5 times 2 is 10, so the numerator would be multiplied times the same value, times 2 again. 3 times 2, 3 times 2 gives me 6. So now I can go ahead and subtract, because I have a common denominator. So I'll subtract the numerators, and actually I cannot go ahead and subtract, because I'm trying to subtract 6 away from 5. So here's a situation where we're either going to have to remember how to borrow, which will work, or if you can't remember how to borrow, or you really hate it, what you can do is write both the original fractions as an improper fraction, and you get the same answer, and you won't have to remember how to borrow. If you remember how to borrow, it goes a little quicker. Let's do that first. To borrow, remember, first, cross off the whole number of the upper fraction and reduce it by 1. That 12 will reduce to an 11. Then, cross off the numerator. This 5 is going to go away. And then you make a new numerator by adding the denominator to the old numerator. So the denominator of 10 plus the old numerator of 5, 10 plus 5, makes a new numerator of 15. Now I want to subtract 15 minus 6. That I can do. 15 minus 6 is 9. My common denominator is 10. Now don't forget to subtract the whole numbers. This isn't a 12 anymore. It's an 11 now because we borrowed. So 11 minus 1. 11 minus 1 is 10. So the answer, how much gas is left in that car? There's 10 9/10 gallons of gas left in the car. Now, just in case you really hate to borrow. So we started with 12.5 minus 1 3/5. And in a little bit of time, we realized that we're going to have to borrow, and maybe we didn't remember how to do it. So to finish the problem off, what I'm going to do, to an alternate way, and we should get the same answer. We better get the same answer. Make them both improper fractions. So remember, you're going to multiply the denominator times the number in front. 2 times 12 is 24. Take that result and add, so the result of 24 plus 1 more. 24 and 1 more is 25. Denominator stays the same, it's 2. Same process with the 1 3/5. I remember before it's 8/5. Let's pretend I don't remember. Multiply the denominator times the number in front. If I multiply 5 times 1, I get a 5. Take that result, in this case 5, and add it to the numerator, 5 plus 3. 5 plus 3 is 8. Denominator stays the same. It was 5, it stays 5. So now I can essentially start the problem from scratch. 25 halves minus 8/5. So again, I'll go through the process of finding a common denominator for 2 and 5. A good common denominator is 10. Make equivalent numerators. So for the first fraction, 2 times something became a 10, it was times 5. The numerator would also be times 5. 25 times 5 is 125. Now for the 8/5, 5 times something became 10. 5 times 2 is 10. So the numerator would be times the same value, times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Now I can go ahead and subtract. 125 minus 16, it's 109. If you don't see it right away, you can actually borrow that. The 2, knock it down to a 1, make this a 15. 15 minus 6 is 9. 1 minus 1 is 0. 1 minus nothing is 1. 109. Common denominator is 10. 109 over 10, which I can convert to 10 and 9/10. Again, in this form, it's not as recognizable how much gas that is. So do the denominator, divide into the numerator. 10 goes into 10 once. 1 times 10 is 10. Subtract, nothing. Bring down the next digit, which is 9. 10 goes into 9, it won't fit 0 times. 0 times 10 is 0. Subtract. 9 minus 0 is 9. That's my remainder. The remainder is 9. The remainder becomes a new numerator. The number that was the denominator stays the denominator. So again, I get 10 and 9/10. Same answer. So with that car that starts with 12.5 gallons of fuel in the tank, at 25 miles to the gallon, it drives for 40 miles. How much fuel is left in the tank? There is 10 and 9/10 gallons of fuel left in the tank of that car.